There are calls a parent never, ever wants to make. A call to the hospital. A call to the principal's office. But there's one that sits in a category all by itself. A call a parent never imagines, never plans for, and prays they'll never have to place. It's the call to the police, on your own child. I need to report my own daughter. A tired voice says over the 911 line. She's in my car, and she refuses to leave. This is the moment a father decided the only way to deal with his entitled adult daughter was to bring in the law. It was a decision that came after years of quiet desperation, a final, painful snap of the enabling cord. The meltdown that followed was so unbelievable, so profoundly shocking, you have to see it to believe it. This isn't just a story about an arrest, it's about the devastating consequences of unchecked entitlement, and the heartbreaking moment a father chose tough love over endless chaos. For John, a 58-year-old man who'd spent his life building a quiet, stable world for his family, this wasn't just any Tuesday. It was the end of the line after 2 decades of escalating turmoil. It was the day he finally hit his breaking point with his 28-year-old daughter, Sarah. To an outsider, the scene looked simple enough, a silver sedan parked in the driveway of a modest suburban home. But inside that car, a storm that had been brewing for years was about to make landfall. Sarah wasn't a teenager. She was a grown woman, a mother herself, with a life that should have been her own. Yet, she was still tied to her parents, not by love or respect, but by a deep-seated entitlement that had poisoned their family. John and his wife, Mary, had watched in despair as their daughter stumbled through adulthood, expecting them to pave her way and clean up every mess. It started small. In college, there were late-night calls demanding money for parties, followed by rage when they suggested a part-time job. After graduation, she bounced between jobs she quit because the work was beneath her, or her boss didn't get her. Each time, she'd land back at her parents' home, treating it not as a refuge, but as her personal hotel, complete with a maid, a chef, and a bottomless bank account. They'd paid off her credit card debt. Twice. They'd co-signed for an apartment she was eventually evicted from, an eviction she blamed on a difficult landlord, not the rent she never paid. Most recently, they had bought her a modest, used car to help her get to work and take her own child to school, a gesture they prayed would finally give her a sense of independence. But 2 months later, Sarah got into a minor fender bender, her fault, and since she'd let the insurance lapse, the car was undrivable. Her reaction wasn't shame or a plan to fix it. It was a demand. She needed a new car. Not a loan. Not help finding one. She needed them to go out and buy her one. That argument had started 3 days ago. It had been a rolling battle of furious texts, screaming phone calls, and ultimatums, all from Sarah. She accused them of not loving her, of not caring about their grandchild. She claimed they were punishing her for one little mistake. John and Mary held firm. They told her they loved her, but they would not be buying another car. The word no was like a foreign language to Sarah, and she treated it as a declaration of war. Which brought them to today. Sarah had shown up unannounced, using a key she'd refused to return, and cornered John in the kitchen. The argument was explosive. She didn't want to talk, she wanted to scream, unleashing a torrent of grievances. John, exhausted and refusing to get into another shouting match, retreated to his garage to work on a woodworking project, his only sanctuary. That's when Sarah escalated. She walked out, got into John's personal car, which sat in the driveway with the keys in the ignition, and locked the doors. She called him from inside. "I'm not leaving until you agree to go to the dealership. This car is my collateral now." For an hour, John tried to reason with her through the closed window. He pleaded. He reasoned. He even tried to bargain. "Sarah, just get out of the car. We can talk about this inside. This is insane." Her response was chillingly calm. "Nope. I'm comfortable. I've got all day." "What's it going to be, Dad?" That's when something inside John finally broke. It wasn't a loud crack, but a quiet, heavy shift. He looked at his daughter, his own flesh and blood, and saw a stranger holding him hostage in his own home. He saw the endless cycle of demands and ultimatums stretching out before him, a future of nothing but heartbreak. He realized with soul-crushing certainty that he wasn't helping her, he was crippling her. Every time he gave in, he taught her that consequences were for other people. He walked back into the house, his hands trembling. His heart pounded against his ribs. He'd tried everything else. For years, they'd suggested therapy, counseling, financial advisors. They tried setting boundaries she just bulldozed over. Now only one option was left. The nuclear option. He took a deep, shaky breath and dialed the 3 numbers he swore he'd never use on his own child, 911. The silence in the house was deafening as John held the phone to his ear. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to hang up. This was his daughter. His Sarah. You don't call the cops on family. You don't invite strangers in uniform to solve a problem that felt like his own personal failure as a father. The shame was a physical weight on his chest. But then, he glanced out the window at his car, and the resolve in his gut hardened. 911 operator. 911, what is your emergency? The operator's voice was calm, professional, and completely detached from the chaos in John's head. He had to clear his throat twice to speak. John. Hello, yes. I need to report a situation. I'm not sure if it's an emergency, but I don't know what else to do. 911 operator. Okay, sir. Tell me what's happening. John, his voice low, almost a whisper. It's my daughter. My adult daughter. She's on my property, and she's refusing to leave. 911 operator. Okay, sir. Where is she on the property? John. She's in my car. In the driveway. She got in, locked herself inside, and she won't get out. 911 operator. And you've asked her to leave the vehicle? John. Yes. For the last hour. I've pleaded with her. She won't listen. She's demanding I buy her a new car, and says she won't leave until I agree. The words sounded even more absurd saying them out loud to a stranger. A part of him expected the operator to laugh. 911 operator. Is she armed, sir? Does she have any weapons? John. No, nothing like that. She's not violent. She's just stubborn. Incredibly stubborn. I know this is a family dispute, but I am at the end of my rope. 911 operator. I understand, sir. Has there been any physical altercation today? John. No. Just yelling. A lot of yelling from her. 911 operator. And she has no legal right to the vehicle? It's registered to you? John. Yes, it's my car, my house. She doesn't live here. She has her own place. Well, she's getting evicted, but she doesn't live here. 911 operator. Okay, sir. What is your name and address? John gave the information, his voice hollow. Each word felt like a betrayal, turning a family crisis into a public record. 911 operator. All right, John. We're dispatching officers to your location. They'll come and speak with both of you. Can you describe your daughter for them? John described Sarah, her height, her hair, her clothes. It felt like filing a missing persons report, but she was right there, 50 feet away, a symbol of how lost she truly was. John. Listen, please tell the officers. I don't want her in trouble. I just want her to leave. I just need her out of my car and to go home. Can you make sure they know that? 911 operator. Sir, the officers will assess the situation when they arrive. Their first goal is always to de-escalate. Just stay on the line with me until they get there. Is she still in the car? John. Yes. She's just sitting there. Probably on her phone, texting her friends about what a terrible father I am. The bitterness in his own voice surprised him. He'd been holding it in for so long, a toxic mix of frustration, love, and disappointment. He felt a profound sense of failure. He thought of all the times he could have done things differently, the times he gave in when he should have stood firm. He had helped create this monster of entitlement, and now he was asking armed strangers to deal with it for him. I enabled this, he whispered to the empty kitchen. This is my fault. 911 operator. Sir, the officers are pulling up now. I need you to go outside and meet them. Do not approach the car again. Just wait for the officers. John. Okay. I will. Thank you. He hung up and walked to the front door, his legs feeling like lead. He saw the patrol car roll to a stop at the end of his driveway. This was it. There was no going back. The arrival of a police car on a quiet suburban street is a spectacle. Neighbors peek through their blinds as the rhythm of the neighborhood skips a beat. For John, watching that patrol car door open was surreal. His home, his peaceful sanctuary, was now a scene. 2 officers emerged. The first, Officer Miller, was a man in his late 40s with a calm, measured demeanor, a 20-year veteran who'd seen every kind of domestic dispute imaginable. His partner, Officer Davis, was younger, his movements sharper, his eyes scanning the entire property in a quick, practiced way. John met them at the end of the driveway, his hands shoved in his pockets to hide their trembling. He felt an urge to apologize, to explain that his family wasn't like this. "Are you John?" Officer Miller asked, his voice low and even. "Yes, officer. Thanks for coming. I'm sorry to have to call you for this," John began. "No need to apologize, sir," Miller said, his gaze shifting to the silver sedan. "So that's your car? And your daughter's inside?" "Yes. That's Sarah. And you've asked her to leave?" asked Officer Davis, pen poised over a small notepad. "For over an hour," John confirmed, exhaustion in his voice. "She refuses. It's a long story, but the short version is, she wants me to buy her a new car, and she's holding mine hostage until I agree." Officer Miller let out a nearly silent sigh of weary recognition. He'd heard this story a dozen times before. "Does she have any history of violence? Any mental health issues we should be aware of?" "Not physically violent, no," John clarified. "But she's manipulative. She knows how to push buttons. She might make accusations, or even fake a medical emergency. She's done it before to get her way." "Okay, good to know," Davis said, jotting it down. "Sir, here's how this will likely play out," Officer Miller explained. "First, we're going to try to talk to her and ask her to exit the vehicle. That's step one. Most of the time, just our presence is enough." John nodded, clinging to that hope. Maybe the uniforms would be enough. "If she refuses," Miller continued, his tone growing more serious, "then you, as the property owner, will have to tell her she's trespassing in front of us. Once you've given that lawful warning, we'll give her one final chance to comply. If she still refuses, she will be removed and placed under arrest for criminal trespassing. Do you understand?" John swallowed hard. "Arrest? You'd have to arrest her?" "That's the last resort, sir. We're a long way from that right now," Miller said reassuringly. "Why don't you stand back by the garage? Let us talk to her first. Sometimes a new voice can change things." John agreed, retreating to his spot, feeling like a spectator at his own family's implosion. He watched the two officers approach the car, their movements confident and unhurried. Inside the car, Sarah had her phone up, probably recording. She wore a smirk, the defiant look of someone who believes they're the main character, totally untouchable. As Officer Miller tapped gently on the window, that smirk wavered for just a second. Reality, in the form of two police officers, had just arrived. The real show was about to begin. The tap on the glass was gentle, a stark contrast to the tension of the situation. Inside, Sarah lowered her phone, her smirk replaced by a look of theatrical indignation. She didn't roll down the window. She just stared at them, as if they were an annoying interruption she could simply ignore. Miller tapped again, a little more firmly. "Ma'am? Police. We need you to roll down your window." Sarah sighed dramatically and pressed the button, the window humming down just a few inches. "Can I help you, officers?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Officer Miller, this is Officer Davis," he said calmly. "We're here because the owner of this car says you're refusing to leave." Sarah let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "The owner? You mean my father? This is a family issue. I can't believe he actually called you. Don't you guys have real crimes to solve?" "We do," Officer Davis chimed in from the back, his tone flat. "So the sooner we can resolve this, the better. This is my dad's car," Sarah continued, ignoring Davis. "I'm just sitting here. I'm not bothering anyone." "Well, ma'am, it becomes our business when the property owner wants you to leave and you refuse," Miller explained patiently. "That's called trespassing. It's pretty simple. This isn't your car, and your father would like you to get out." "I'm not trespassing, I'm waiting for my dad to be reasonable," she shot back. "We were just about to run errands. He drove me here, so I'm waiting for him to drive me back." John, standing by the garage, flinched at the effortless, shameless lie. Officer Miller didn't even look at him. His focus was entirely on Sarah. "Ma'am, that's not what your father told us. He said he's asked you to leave multiple times. Right now, all we're asking is for you to step out of the car so we can talk this out." "And go where?" Sarah retorted, her voice rising. He's supposed to be helping me. He's my father. Instead, he calls the police on his own daughter. What kind of man does that? It was a classic deflection, shifting the focus from her actions to her father's. Miller didn't bite. Ma'am, we're not here to talk about your family dynamics. We're here because you're in a car that isn't yours, on property that isn't yours, and you've been asked to leave. It's very straightforward. This is harassment, she declared. You're taking his side just because he's the old man who owns the house. You don't even know the whole story. You're right, I don't, Miller conceded. And I don't need to. The law is clear. If the property owner wants you gone, you have to go. So, for the third time, are you going to step out of the vehicle? Sarah crossed her arms, a pout on her face. No. I'm not going anywhere. It's the principle of the thing now. You get that you're probably going to jail, right? Davis asked, stepping forward, his patience wearing thin. Because that's the next stop. We can play this game, but you'll lose. You can't arrest me for sitting in my dad's car, she scoffed. He can't just press charges. Yes, we can, and yes, he can, Miller said, his voice losing its warmth. We're at that point. I'm going to call your father over here. He's going to tell you, in our presence, that you are trespassed from this property. After that, you'll have one final chance. He turned and gestured for John to approach. John's heart sank. This was the moment. He walked forward, avoiding Sarah's furious glare, and stood next to Officer Miller. John, Miller said, I need you to look at your daughter and tell her that she's no longer welcome in your car or on your property, and that if she doesn't leave immediately, you'll be pressing charges. John took a breath and looked directly at Sarah, whose face was a mask of fury. Sarah, he said, his voice cracking, I'm telling you now, you need to get out of my car. You are trespassing. Please, just get out and go home. Sarah stared at him, her eyes wide. You're really doing this? To me? Your own daughter? Please, Sarah, he repeated, his voice pleading. Don't make this any harder. The line had been drawn. The formal warning was given. Her next move would decide whether this ended with her walking away, or with the cold click of handcuffs. The warning hung in the air. For a moment, Sarah just stared at her father, her expression a mix of disbelief and rage. This was her last chance to walk away. She chose to hit the accelerator. Fine, she hissed. You want to do this? Fine. But she didn't move. Instead, she leaned back, a picture of defiance. I'm not going anywhere. Officer Miller's posture shifted. The time for talking was over. Okay, ma'am. You've been given a lawful order to exit the vehicle. You are now under arrest for criminal trespassing. You've got to be kidding me, she sneered. This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong. Step out of the car, ma'am, Officer Davis said, moving to open the driver's side door. As his hand touched the handle, Sarah's strategy changed from defiance to desperation. The anger vanished, replaced by a sudden, theatrical wave of distress. She put a hand to her chest, her breathing becoming shallow and fast. Wait, she gasped, her eyes wide with fake panic. I can't breathe. I think I'm having a panic attack. You're scaring me. Miller and Davis exchanged a knowing glance. This was the performance John had warned them about. Ma'am, do you need medical assistance? Miller asked in a monotone voice. We can call an ambulance. That wasn't the right response. An ambulance would only delay things. No, she snapped, her panic miraculously gone. I just need you to back off. You're stressing me out. My sugar is low. I'm diabetic, and this is causing my levels to crash. Okay, Davis said, unfazed. Do you have insulin in your purse? We can get it for you. No, it's at home, she cried, her story unraveling. I just need to be left alone. That's not an option anymore, ma'am, Miller stated flatly. You're under arrest. We can do this the easy way, where you step out, or the hard way, where we physically remove you. Your choice, but you are coming out of this car. Realizing the medical act had failed, Sarah pivoted again, this time to wild accusations. Her voice became shrill. This is his fault, she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at John. He's an emotionally abusive narcissist. He has been my whole life. You should be investigating him, not me. She then turned her fury on the officers. "And you? You're just his little thugs, aren't you? You just like bullying women. I bet you're enjoying this." "Ma'am, get out of the car," Davis repeated, his voice like stone. He reached in to take her arm. The moment he touched her, she recoiled. "Don't touch me," she shrieked. "Don't you dare touch me. That's assault. Don't molest me." The word molest was a bomb, a vile, calculated accusation designed to make them hesitate. But Officer Miller had heard it before. "We are not molesting you, ma'am," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "We are lawfully arresting you for a crime you are committing right now. Final warning. Get out of the car." For her last act, Sarah tried to invent a new law. "You know, if you pulled me over on the highway, you wouldn't let me get out," she argued, as if she were a law professor. "You'd say, roll down your window. So why is this different? I'm safer in the car." Officer Davis let out a short, humorless laugh. "Because we're not on the highway. We're in your dad's driveway, arresting you for trespassing. Are you done?" The well of manipulation had finally run dry. Her face, which had cycled through rage, panic, and condescension, now settled into a mask of pure fury. The escalation was over. The meltdown was about to begin. The switch flipped. Sarah's calculated persona vanished, and what was left was raw, primal rage. "Get your hands off of me!" she screamed as Officer Davis reached for her arm again. She tried to pull the car door shut, but Miller's hand blocked it. "You are under arrest. Stop resisting," Davis commanded. Sarah began to thrash in the driver's seat. "I'm not resisting. You are assaulting me. I'm being kidnapped." Miller and Davis grabbed her arms and began to pull her from the car, their movements firm and controlled. The moment her sneakers hit the pavement, she lost all control. "No! No! You can't do this to me!" she shrieked, twisting and writhing in their grip. She wasn't really fighting them, but she was resisting with every ounce of her being. "Put your hands behind your back," Miller ordered. "No! I'm having a heart attack," she screamed, bizarrely returning to a failed tactic. "You're going to kill me!" John stood frozen by the garage, a statue of regret. He could feel his neighbor's eyes on him. He wanted to block out the sound of his daughter's screams echoing down the street, but he couldn't. He had started this. He had to see it through. The officers finally wrestled her arms behind her back. As the first cuff clicked shut, a new wave of hysteria washed over her. "Daddy, help me!" she suddenly cried, her voice shifting from rage to a childlike plea. "Daddy, don't let them do this. I'll be good. I'm sorry." The cry hit John like a punch. It was the same voice she used as a little girl when she scraped her knee. For a second, his resolve wavered. But then he saw the flash of calculation in her eyes as she glanced at him. It wasn't a genuine plea. It was one last performance. "We gave you every chance," Davis grunted, securing the second cuff. Now fully restrained, Sarah's meltdown hit its peak. She threw her head back and screamed. She tried to drop to the ground, forcing the officers to hold her up. "I am a mother. You are traumatizing my child. He will have an own mother because of you," she bellowed, aiming the words at her father. Then came the threats. "I'm suing you. I'm suing all of you. You'll lose your jobs. You'll lose your pensions. I will own you," she spat. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Miller said, walking her toward the patrol car. Every step was a struggle. "I will not calm down. You are kidnapping me. My father loves me. He doesn't want this," she screamed, trying to rewrite the narrative. As they passed John, she locked eyes with him. The hatred in her gaze was a tangible thing. "You did this," she mouthed silently. They reached the patrol car. The sight of the hard plastic seat and the metal cage seemed to break through her rage for a single moment. This was real. This was happening. Her face crumpled, and for the first time, a genuine tear, born of pure shock and fear, rolled down her cheek. "Please," she whispered, her voice suddenly small. "Please don't." But it was too late. The time for "please" was long gone. Officer Davis guided her head down, and she folded into the back of the car. The doors shut with a solid, final thud, the sound that marked the end of the confrontation, and the beginning of the consequences. The departure of the patrol car left a vacuum of silence. John stood motionless, watching the spot where the car had been. The adrenaline faded, replaced by a profound, hollow ache. There was no victory, no relief. Just the crushing weight of what he had done. Officer Miller had stayed behind. He approached John slowly. "It's done, John," he said softly. John turned, his eyes glassy. Did I do the right thing, officer?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Officer Miller leaned against his own car. "I've been a cop for over 20 years," he began, his voice filled with weary empathy. "I've been on hundreds of calls just like this. And I can tell you, a parent calling us is the absolute last resort. You didn't do this because you were angry. You did it because you were out of options." John shook his head, a single tear tracing a path on his cheek. "I just see her face, screaming. That look in her eyes. It was pure hatred. It was pure panic," Miller corrected gently. "For people who've learned that screaming is how they get what they want, the word no is a shock to the system. A no backed up by handcuffs is a total system failure. The hatred you saw was her lashing out because her world, for the first time, wasn't bending to her will." John looked at his hands. "I enabled this," he said, repeating the confession from his kitchen. "When she wrecked her first car at 17, I bought her a new one. When she maxed out her credit cards, I paid them off. I kept thinking I was being a loving father. But I was just teaching her that actions don't have consequences." He looked up at the officer, his eyes filled with a deep, bottomless sorrow. "It's my fault she's in the back of that car." "Maybe," Officer Miller conceded with a nod. "Parenting doesn't come with a manual. We all do the best we can. But at some point, protecting them stops them from growing up. What you did today, it might feel like the worst thing you've ever done. But listen to me. Sometimes, letting them hit rock bottom is the only way to help them find solid ground. This might be the most loving thing you've done for her in years." Miller's words didn't erase the pain, but they offered a different frame. It wasn't an act of punishment, but a desperate act of love. A last-ditch effort to save his daughter from herself. The officer handed John a small card with a case number. "She'll be processed downtown on charges of misdemeanor criminal trespass and maybe resisting an officer. She'll see a judge in the morning for bail. What you and your wife do next, that's up to you." John took the card. He knew what Miller was really asking. Would they rush down with bail money, repeating the same old pattern? Or would this time, finally, be different? "Thank you, officer," John said, his voice a little stronger. Miller nodded once, got into his car, and drove away, leaving John alone in the silence. It wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the quiet of a battlefield after the fighting is over. The hours after Sarah's arrest were the longest of John and Mary's lives. Sarah's calls from jail began about 2 hours after her arrest. The first was a tirade of screaming and crying, blaming John for ruining her life. John listened, said nothing, and hung up. The second call, an hour later, was different. Her voice was small and scared. "Dad, please," she begged. "It's cold in here. I want to come home." This was the call that tested them. John and Mary sat at their kitchen table, the phone on speaker, and made the hardest decision of their lives. They would not post her bail. Letting her spend a night in jail felt cruel, but they knew bailing her out would make the entire day meaningless. It would just be another mess they cleaned up. The next morning, Sarah appeared before a magistrate, charged with criminal trespassing and resisting an officer without violence. The judge set a low bail of $1,000 and issued a no-contact order. After 18 hours in custody, Sarah was released, humbled and furious. The weeks that followed were a cold war. Sarah stayed with a friend, posting passive-aggressive messages on social media about family betrayal. John and Mary started going to a support group for families of troubled adults and heard stories far worse than their own, which brought a strange, grim comfort. At the court date, John was subpoenaed. Walking into the courtroom and seeing his daughter at the defendant's table was gut-wrenching. When called to the stand, he simply recounted the events of that day, his voice flat and unemotional. Faced with her father's testimony and the officer's bodycam footage, Sarah took a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to trespassing, and in return the resisting charge was dropped. The sentence, a year of probation, mandatory anger management classes, and a permanent no-contact order for the duration of the probation. The consequences were no longer theoretical. Sarah now had a criminal record and a probation officer. For the first time, she was being held accountable by a system that was immune to her tears and her rage. The road forward wasn't easy. The probation and classes didn't magically fix Sarah's issues, but they were a start. They forced her into a room with a therapist who challenged her worldview. Slowly, painfully, she began to take the first steps towards self-sufficiency, not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice. The cycle of entitlement had been broken, not by conversation, but by the cold, hard reality of the law. The decision to call 911 on his own daughter was the hardest of John's life. The shocking result wasn't just the arrest, it was the slow, painful realization that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is step back and let their child finally face the music. Sarah's story is a stark reminder that loving someone and enabling them are two very different things. One builds a person up, the other cripples them. Her consequences were severe, but they were also necessary. Whether this rock-bottom moment leads to lasting change remains to be seen, but for the first time, Sarah is on a path she has to walk herself. What do you think? Did this dad do the right thing? Was there another way to handle this, or was this the only option he had left? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next one.